Antonio is in Oakland, California, and wants to get in on the Steve Kerr talk and the fate of the Golden State Warriors. Antonio, what's up, man?
Oh, man, I think Steve Kerr, he has some bad rotations. He plays favorites and all that. He has some dog houses, kind of like Kyle Shanahan-esque, Brandon Ayuk and all that. Kuminga and Wiggins, man, they could easily be like a poor man's Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, man. Like, I don't understand why the plus-minus is not that good when they're on the court together. But, Wiggins, he's like a days ago, trade him. Hopefully we get Pascal Siakam. As far as, Kay Cunningham, I was just talking about that with my dad earlier this trip. So, yeah, I actually want Kay Cunningham to be on the Warriors somehow, some way in the next year. So, man, him and Steph would be a great tandem. So, man, happy holidays. I'll be watching you later. Larry Krueger.
Appreciate you, man.
He's the man, Antonio. Larry Krueger, the legend. Hey, I've got to defend Kerr a little bit when it comes to Kuminga. Because, yes, I think because Podziemski in the beginning of the year was just DMP'd. Like, he wasn't playing until it was that Minnesota game. Remember, we were talking about that. It was the Minnesota game where, Draymond went off for the first time and got Rudy Gobert in that chokehold. But that was the game where Brandon Podziemski, that was his breakout game. And then, of course, he gets an opportunity to play out of sort of need. But Steve Kerr, he was the one guy that was privy to TJD as well as Brandon Podziemski. We didn't see these guys play at practice. We had no idea what they were capable of. So that's on him for not moving him up in the rotation a lot sooner. But with that being said, when it comes to Kuminga, when you have games like that, for whatever reason, none of the callers are mentioning the minus 26 and the 6 turnovers. We'd like to talk about what it is that he has done since he was inserted in the starting lineup, but it's this lack of consistency. Whereas, if it's Podziemski as well as Trace Jackson-Davis, I think you're seeing the coach, although he's slow to the party, giving them an opportunity to play because he recognizes that these rookies are contributing. Again, Jonathan Kuminga's inconsistency was on full display again last night, Larry. I'm just curious your thoughts.
Well, I mean, you're going to have to live with some of that. I mean, so he had 6 turnovers. And what did Miami turn that into? They turned it into 4 points. Who cares? I really don't care about those 6 turnovers that Miami turned into 4 points. I really care more about Jonathan Kuminga getting consistent run since he is the future. He's averaged about 21 minutes per game in 30 games this year coming into that game last night. He's making about 50% from the field. He's hitting a low percentage of his threes. He last year, he's been better from 3 in December. I think he's 29% for the year, but like 41% in December. So, I mean, I think we're seeing some improvement there. I just think that, you look at Wiggins and he's just struggling on both ends of the floor. He's got the second worst net rating among players in Kerr's rotation. He's scoring just 12.6 points per game. It's the lowest average of his career. He's shooting 29% from beyond the arc. That's his worst mark since he entered the league in 2014. He just doesn't seem like it's like we thought he was the Celtics finals year was going to be like a takeoff point, and that's clearly like his high water mark. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is on Wiggins. To me, it seems like, the Warriors are sitting there and they're the 11th seed in the West and the losses are piling up and Wiggins struggles. He has one good game and then 3 or 4 struggling games. I think he's going to get dealt. I really do. If you said bet on somebody to get dealt, my bet is on Andrew Wiggins.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Back out to the phone lines, 888-957-9570. Daly City, and Rich wants to join the conversation. Hey, Rich.
Hey, guys. Happy New Year, or almost Happy New Year. Hey, I think, this year is this year or bust. And I look at Draymond and Wiggins as the 2 moves we need to make. And if we don't do anything this year, let Clay and CP3's contracts expire, free up cash. But you guys kind of alluded to where I was hitting as far as trade Draymond to Detroit as a veteran leader and ask for Bogdanovich and Duran. And then Wiggins, try to get a draft pick. And then if all else fails after this year, it's Cooper flag lottery for us 2 years down the road. Let's get a first rounder in either the next 2 years with Wiggins. And we already have a starting four of young guys that we just add someone like a Flag to or Duran to, and we have a starting five for the next generation. And then with Curry still there and whoever else. So what do you guys think?
Well, Cooper's coming out this year, so I think you said 2 years down the road. So Cooper Flag will be the number one pick in the 2024 NBA draft. So I think the Warriors have a shot at him.
I mean, the question, I think, is how much upside do the Warriors' four young players really have? If you committed to making, Podziemski and Jackson Davis and Moody and Kuminga more integral parts of their rotation and you leaned on those guys more, how good of a team would you be? Are they good players or are they all, rotation players off the bench? Is Trace Jackson Davis a starter or is he a backup? Is Podziemski a starter or is he a backup? Is Kuminga a starter or is he a backup? It's like, I don't know. It's a little bit of a projection on these guys. It's a little bit of a risk to just say they're the guys. But you know what? I think that's where they're at right now, where you've got some ascending players and you've got some players who are in decline. And I'd rather see them invest more minutes in their ascending young players than playing players that are in obvious decline because you don't want to have to tell them that they're going to come off the bench.
If you're going to do it, you got to do it now because they're only going to decline more, which makes it even that much more difficult to move them down the road. So if you want value, you got to pull the trigger right now.
And it's really tough, too, because you also have guys who, their ego is part of what makes them great. You have to really have a belief to make it. And so, how much of that is the reason that Klay Thompson made it to the NBA is this unbelievable, undying belief that he has in himself. And that's where it's going to be, I think, very difficult to convince him that, hey, you know what? You take a lesser role. And this is kind of a bigger overarching issue because if he's not happy with a 2-year, $50 million offer, I'm not even 100% sure that he's worth a 2-year, $50 million offer. And yet he's not happy with that offer. If that's what's been reported is accurate, then they've got a situation that's kind of a, where's that going right there? If you think that $50 million over 2 years is overpaying, and yet he's going to feel disrespected, how do you come to common ground there?
I think a lot of that was on the heels of what it is that Draymond got at 4 years for 100. And I think that, certainly Klay thinks that he thinks all three of them are on equal footing. And so why is Draymond getting the 4 and the security and the 100 mil and you're only giving me 2? So yeah, pride goes a long way with that guy. And I think he feels as though he was disrespected. Speaking of Draymond Green, the caller mentioned Draymond going to Detroit. I'm with the caller who mentioned that Draymond, we have to wait and see for Draymond to come back just to see how all of this works. What is Draymond when he comes back? Is he in the starting lineup? That means that, who's getting moved? Does Draymond take a relegated role to the bench? And what does it mean for him unlocking maybe Trace Jackson Davis? You talked about Jonathan Kuminga in the dunker spot. Imagine those two working together. So I think we got to let this breathe a little bit with Draymond coming back and then reassessing the basketball team.
I agree. And Draymond, I would like to see, play a lot of those heavy minutes with Steph. I mean, he plays so well off Steph. Steph plays so well off him. If you're going to have Draymond Green on the roster, to me, you got to play him in the Steph Curry minutes, right? I mean, he's so they're so good at playing off of one another that he's got to play those minutes. I mean, not every minute, but he's got to play a lot of the minutes that Steph plays.
And I don't think it's by accident that Steph Curry has been not Steph Curry-esque with the last two performances, including the game against Denver and then last night with just the 13 points. A lot of that is attributed to the no Draymond on the floor to give him that dribble handoff or set those screens. As you mentioned, they play so well together. But it'll be interesting when he comes back. And again, speaking of Steph, when Steph does have an off night, here we go. One of the issues that we continually talk about is their lack of identifying that number two. Steph cannot afford to score 13 points or even 20 points. It's got to be 25, 30, 35 points in order for them to have a shot. Why? Because there's nobody else. This is not, Klay Thompson is not picking up that, he's not picking up that scoring load, nor is Andrew Wiggins. And so it's Steph or bust, which has been sort of problematic from the outset, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. Last night was a perfect indication. He has 13 points. You got no shot. There's nobody else that's scoring the basketball with any level of consistency. When you think about, NBA basketball teams, and this started back in the day with Boston, with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett, that always thought that you got to have at least three stars. Now, it's not necessarily you don't necessarily need three, but you need at least two. Wasn't that? Think about the Golden State Warriors when they went back-to-back with Kevin Durant, and obviously when you had Klay and Steph and Draymond all in their prime. It was arguably the best starting lineup to where you are today, where you're reduced essentially to just one guy, which is Steph. And it's just not enough.
He just badly needs some sidekick who can be a dominating scorer next to him. I think we all want it to be Klay Thompson. But is Klay capable of fulfilling that role? If not, they could use a shot creator. There's no question. They could use somebody who could beat somebody off the dribble and get into the lane and create for somebody else. That would be nice. They got to figure out their rotation. They got a lot of equal players that are relatively equal. But if you said to me, what one piece would you like to add to Golden State? It's easy to look at them and say, oh, size. But that's a tough, it has to be the right player. I would say you got to have a great scorer opposite Steph somehow. Some other great scorer. Somebody who could score 20 a night opposite Steph Curry.
Well, Wiggins, you look at his career stats, he's at 20 an hour. He's just over 19 a game. Let's take a quick call before we get to the break. And off to East Palo Alto. Thurman, how are you? Welcome aboard.
Hey, how's it going? I think everybody is right about certain things, but I think, like the caller said, we need to get Dre back to kind of figure out our defense, because without Dre, we have no defense at all, and you can see that in the way we play. Nobody rotates to help or anything like that. I don't know who we can get to fill that void for Klay Thompson missing his shots or Wiggins, but I don't know how the contrast will match up. But if you can get DeJounte Murray from Atlanta, make a trade and get a second rounder or something like that. But I really feel like if you're going to trade Draymond, you got to trade Wiggins and get a total package. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they're going to consider all options when it comes to Wiggins, and some of them will probably include Draymond, some wouldn't. DeJounte Murray is kind of an interesting name. I saw a big rumor that the Lakers were badly on his trail. What do you think of that name?
I like him. Again, it's just, what is it that because he's another young player. So what is it that you're giving up? At this point, it's
he makes $18 million a year. So, both, it would be DeJounte Murray and something if you're trading Wiggins or Draymond or anybody making north of 20, you're going to have to throw somebody else in there. But Murray's an interesting player for sure.
I don't know if the Warriors have enough enough trade capital. If you're not going to include Kuminga, I just don't know why a GM would entertain the Moody's and even the Draymonds of the world at this point.